Hello, welcome to Integrated Wellbeing YouTube channel and podcast for people in grief and the professionals who serve them. I'm Georgena Grace from the Institute, and we're here to provide education, inspiration, and practical tools by interviewing those bereaved by loss, mental health professionals, and grief specialists. Integrated Wellbeing Institute seeks to awaken the griever to their inner peace through the guidance of their body. And today I am delighted to introduce you to my longtime friend and colleague, Jean Fox. Good morning, Jean.
Good morning. Good morning.
It's so wonderful to have you here. Jean is an artist. She is a makeup artist to the stars. She is also a seeker on this consciousness path who has created songs, written articles, and is a person who knows that this time on the planet is very, very special. So Jean, I'm so glad you're here today. Would you please share with our viewers how you and I met?
Oh, well, I had an after-death communication that set me on a path of how did that happen? So I took a psychic development workshop, and the morning it took like a 3-day sabbatical and was in silence, didn't listen, didn't take any calls, didn't listen to music. And the morning of the workshop, I said in prayer, why am I here? What am I looking for? And I'm like, I need more joy in my life. And I get to the workshop and I sit down next to Georgena, and she's got that big smile of hers. And I said, so after much laughter, I said, so what do you do? And she goes, well, I'm a grief counselor. My business is called Joy with Georgena. And I just cracked up and couldn't help but tell her what I had prayed for that morning. And there she was. And we've been friends ever since. She's come in and out of my life in meaningful ways all these years. And I would guess that was like been 14 years now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because the website was created, Jean, in 2010. So that's, yes. And we were probably just in development when you arrived in Portland at that time for that workshop. Mm-hmm.
And serendipitously or synchronistically,
yes,
it is this week or this time that I lost my friend 14 years ago in 2010 in October. Mm-hmm. where it all started for me, which set me on my path.
It did. So tell us about your friend, how you met, and that loss.
Well, Valerie was my neighbor, and we both were survivors of suicides from people that we loved. Mine was my brother, and hers was her mother. And our neighborhood was having a neighborhood garage sale, and she rode up on her bike and asked me if she could put her stuff in my yard because I had a better spot than she did. And within 15 minutes, we both discovered that we had that mutual understanding of what it's like to live through something so devastating. And she had this, but despite that, she had this bubbly personality, and she was present. She was a lot of presence in our neighborhood to so many people. Mm-hmm. She said she would walk her neighbors. She'd call you up and let's go for a walk. Let's go for a bike ride.
Oh my word. It took me a minute to understand that. I wish I had somebody in my neighborhood that would say, hey, Georgena, let's go for a walk. They could walk me. Instead of their dog, they could walk me. Mm-hmm. We need to move. That's one of the things for every single person listening, mm-hmm. is grief gets stuck in the body. And so we've got to move. So thank heavens. That's a new one, Jean. And I will remember Valerie each time now for probably the next 30 days that I go for a walk. Valerie, you're walking me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, our arms and our legs are levers. They're like the pumps of the bellows. And
yes,
we need them to move us through this earth plane, this material world.
Yes.
Keep our fires going.
I love that image, Jean. And that's why I'm so delighted that you're here today, because you have had so much life experience. And I'm curious about your brother. What's his name and how old was he when he departed from the earth plane?
Aw, thanks for asking. His name was JC, Jaycee. My father was James C.
Oh, okay.
And when it was time to name him, my father says, "I don't care. Name him Jesus Christ for all I care." And my mom said, "I can't name him Jesus Christ." So he said, "Then spell it out."
And
that
so
was the story anyway. I don't know.
Oh, that's a riot. So instead of Jesus Christ JC, we spelled it out. Jaycee.
Anyway,
right?
he was an individual. He was an artist. He never really admitted he was an artist. He was very generous. But he was the middle child, and he was the scapegoat in the family. So he was, my parents divorced when I was 7. So he was like 10, 11. He was 11. And he just he was one of those people that just had that tough path. And over time, he became addicted. He suffered with depression and addictions. And, addictions are just like, you're descending that ladder of, being in control, just one step lower, one step lower, one step lower, to the point where he just decided, I'm gonna take control of this situation.
And leave.
And he was 43.
Wow. Oh.
So that was a blow.
Yes.
It took me 3 years, I think, before I could talk about him.
And what were the things that allowed you to move from that place of not talking about him to being able to say your brother's name again?
I think, I had kind of let go of religion. I think I was mad at God. I let go of religion, but I started to explore after death experiences.
Okay.
Or near death experiences. I tried to understand what death was more. Okay. Because he came to me in a dream. I had a visitation in a dream. And in the dream, he pretty much just gave me the feeling that everything was okay. He was okay. He looked good. He was happy. And he shared that energy with me that it was all fine. And he goes, "Yeah, I did that. It was stupid, but that's what I did." And move on. And I think maybe at that same, no, it wasn't the same developed psychic class we went to, but it was the first afterlife awareness conference.
Yes.
I met a medium who was a psych worker in a mental health hospital.
Yes.
She told the story about one of her patients that was suicidal and had attempted suicide several times. And she said, "Guess what?" She goes, "We're all going to die. It doesn't matter how we die." Yes.
And when you heard that, did that shift the stigma of suicide, the feeling of suicide for you then, Jean?
It did. I think it really did. It just softened it. It's like, that's true. It doesn't really, we're all going.
Exactly. Nobody gets off this planet alive.
I wish he had made different choices.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the thing about suicide is that for those that are left behind, hope for healing is it in the material world. We have to understand the difference between being in the body and being a spirit, that we're on a spiritual path, and being in the body is hard.
It is, especially when one is sensitive. And you've already said your brother is an artist. You've already said your brother is generous.
Mm-hmm.
And those are two of the components, because I'm imagining sensitivity then as an artist, of that profile of people at risk to die of suicide. So I'm curious, did the dream happen before the psychic class or before this person made that statement?
Yes, yeah. So these things,
okay. So it was like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
By the way, so with that symbol is, it's like these levels of understanding.
That was my intention.
And the letter H in the Hebrew letters is 2 ones, one in the other, and there's a third line between the two. And I've read that represents brothers and sisters, that we provide stability for each other, that we lean against each other, and we help keep each other upright. And that's why we have such strong connections to our siblings. Whether we see them every day or not, there's still that connection is there. And maybe that's part of our DNA. Maybe it's in our DNA, the double helix. Same symbol, just once.
Exactly.
We're seeing that way.
Right.
The other one we're seeing just flat and 2-dimensionally.
Right. Yes.
So boy, has it been like that song, Long and Winding Road.
It has been indeed. Yes, indeed.
Have to take a deep breath.
How long was? Yeah, absolutely. And when you take a deep breath, what happens for you?
I think when we take a deep breath, we have to breathe out. We have to let go. We breathe in, we breathe out. Stuff happens. We acknowledge it. We honor it. We sort it out. And we have to let it go. I always say, I'm not in charge.
That's right.
I'm not in charge. I'm just witnessing.
That's exactly. I'm surrendering. And it's not really a white flag. That surrender can be the letting go of this so we may have this.
And sometimes it's just not fun.
You got it.
It's not fun. It's hard.
I'm just not happy about this.
But thank goodness we have others besides our family, people that are willing to listen, people that are willing to show up in all the different ways that only they could.
That's right. So let's get back to Valerie, because I'm a timeline person. I'm curious, how long had JC been gone before Valerie showed up in your life? I'm just curious.
Yeah, about 11 years, which was kind of curious. So,
and 11 is a new gateway.
Right. Her mother and my brother took their lives the same year. So we both had that experience in 1999.
Okay.
And
and then what I heard,
but we met. I'm trying to remember when we met. Well, it would have had to have been, if it was 10 years. Now I'm missing something.
So what is it? 09 that you then met Valerie, perhaps, and then I
met Valerie before then. I met Valerie before that. It was 10 years. It was 11 years to when she took her life from when they took kids.
All right.
When Valerie and I met and she talked to me about her mother's death, she said her mother had taken her life on Valerie's birthday. We're on a bike ride one day and Valerie said, why would she do that to me? Why would she take her life on my birthday? And I said, I don't know, Valerie. I said, maybe so that you would remember her.
Mm-hmm. And
Well,
when she heard that, what happened?
She just listened. She just digested it. But
Mm-hmm.
Valerie took her life on my birthday, or right near my birthday.
11 years ago.
So she repeated that pattern.
Wow.
But she had told me before she left, she said, Jean, I'm not doing well. She had OCD, bipolar. And I think people think of OCD as just an obsession, but it can be an obsession to the point where you're going to take care of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not just, oh, I have to wash my hands several times a day. It can be a lot of different things. And it's tiring.
It is. It's exhausting. And it takes you out of a reality. It's like things become so intense that the awareness of how reality really can be is lost because you're in this tunnel.
But Valerie was highly intellectual. She was very smart. And I had begun having anomalous experiences. I had learned to meditate through a shamanic workshop that I took. And I started having what some people call downloads, just awarenesses. And she knew about that. And she asked me, she wanted to have more understanding. And she was trying to climb out of her hole. But she had reconnected with her father, who was not a good person for her to be in her life. And so that was almost like self-flagellation. She was hurting herself by seeing him. So anyway, she said to me, she goes, Jean, I'm not doing well. They're calling me from the other side. So right after this happened,
after she said that, or right after she died?
Right after she died, I got a phone call to do makeup for Dr. Oz. I was planning her funeral at the time. This isn't in the Bluebird story that's being published. Which
we'll talk about next.
This coming week, yeah. Right after that, I got called to do Dr. Oz's makeup, and I was grieving, and I thought, I don't care who it is. I don't want to work right now. So I said no. Before I took my hand off the phone rang again, and this time it was Dr. Oz's office. Will you please do Dr. Oz's makeup tomorrow? We only need you for 2 hours. So I thought, wow, I could tell him the story. That'd be pretty amazing. I guess I could set my grief aside for 2 hours. So here's an example of showing up for other people, even though you're in grief.
Okay. And how did that work? How were those 2 hours? And then what was the ripple effect of that on you?
The ripple effect was amazing. I mean, Dr. Oz, I got to be alone with Dr. Oz and tell him the story. He acknowledged my grief, and but it pretty much ended there. But while during that same trip, I met the president of his nonprofit and was able to tell her the story, and we're still friends to this day. And a whole slew of life-changing events took place. Okay.
So what was the story you told Dr. Oz and this person from the nonprofit? Let's hear that story.
When before I had left before Valerie, I was leaving on a trip, and I knew Valerie wasn't doing well. So I called her and told her, okay, I'm sorry I haven't been available lately. I'm going to be away for a few days, but when I get back, we'll spend some time together. And she said, okay, I love you so much. Have a great time. I didn't ask her how she was doing because she sounded so good. I didn't want to bring up anything bad.
Exactly. You wanted to leave it with that.
Yeah, we'll pick this up later.
Yes.
So I went to Nashville for a wedding, and it was my birthday. So I went to the Bluebird Cafe, And we consulted with a medical intuitive, just on a whim. Let's check with this medical intuitive about some issues that my husband had been having. And then medical intuitive said, "Oh, well, I see a lot of grief." We go, "No, we don't have any grief." She goes, "Yeah, I see profound grief." That doesn't sound like us at all. The next morning, I wake up in my darkened hotel room, check my email, and there's a message from my neighbor that Valerie had taken her life. We were catatonic. We were away from home. We were catatonic. We had tickets to the Grand Ole Opry that night. It was the 100th anniversary of the Grand Ole Opry, and we were moving through space and time. It was just unbelievable. So when we came back, I was trying to set my grief aside, and my computer had been being serviced while I was gone, because I had recently met someone, again, who was connected to music. And he said, my music files were down. And he goes, "Well, while you're gone, why don't you have your computer serviced? Because they can fix things like that." And I'm like, okay. So when I got back, I was trying to just set my grief aside, go back to work, right? We do that.
Yes.
We hide in our work. So I plug in my computer, and my computer asked me for a new password. And I'm like, what? I've had the same password for the last 20 years. Why would my computer ask for a new password? And so my husband, so I assigned the word bluebird, because I'd been to the Bluebird Cafe and I was blue. So you know how you just come up with these words.
Yes, they come through. And
then it asked for an icon, and I assigned a butterfly. So now there's 2 words, bluebird and butterfly. My husband came in to help me, and I told him what was going on. So now he knows the 2 words. He goes, where did that come from? And I go, I don't know. You know how it is, I guess, because I'm blue. So now he and I this just happened. He and I are the only 2 that know this word.
Yes.
So let me back up for a second. After I found out that Valerie had taken her life, I called the intuitive back, and the intuitive said, "Oh, well, that's probably why you called me in the first place, because I help people transition that have met an untimely death. I'll talk to your friend and I'll get back to you." And I was like, whatever that means. Okay, whatever. So then after this thing happened with my computer, so now I'm just living with this. I'm just trying to get back to work. And a couple days goes by, and the intuitive calls back, and I take the phone upstairs, put it on speaker so my husband can hear it. And she goes, "I want to thank you for asking me to talk to your friend. It was quite a unique experience for me. First of all, she wants you to know that she's happy. Second of all, she said, be free of worry, be free of anger, be free of resentment, and be free of guilt. Life doesn't have to be hard. Choose your way." And then
Would you repeat that again? That's profound, Jean. Please.
Be free of worry, be free of anger, be free of resentment, and be free of guilt. Life doesn't have to be hard, because Valerie made everything hard. It doesn't have to be hard. Choose your way. Is it going to be hard, or are you going to choose something easy? And then she said, "And she has a word for you." And I go, "What's the word?" And she goes, "The word is bluebird." And then she turned into a butterfly and flew into the light. So she matched the 2 words out of all the words in the universe, all the languages. See, we live in alphabet soup, and we're just stringing the letters together. And we do the same with our experiences. We string our experiences together, our friendships, the different things that we do. So I was gobsmacked. I was just like, what just happened? How did that happen? So then I went on a quest to find people that were consciousness researchers, computer technologists, and I just have a high school education. I was like, how am I ever going to make sense out of this? Well, since that time, one of the prompts that I had gotten when I was starting to get it was actually scientific information about physics when I was getting downloads. I'm like, what do I do with all this information? Do I need to go to school? Do I need to get a degree? What would I get a degree in? And something just said, you don't need to have a degree. You just need to know people with the degrees. Since then, I met Stanley Krippner, Dr. Stanley Krippner, who you know too. And
tell our audience about him, please.
Dr. Stanley Krippner is a pioneering humanistic and transpersonal psychologist and researcher of paranormal, or now they're calling extraordinary experiences. When I first started having extraordinary experiences, I found the word noetic through the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And then I went, oh, this is a thing. This happens to people. I thought I was going crazy. How could these things possibly happen? So other people that I wanted to meet were Lauren Carpenter, who was one of the founders of Pixar, because he's an expert at computer generated information, and Daniel Kotke, one of the first employees of Apple. And I've met all of those people. Both Stan and Lauren are researchers at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And Daniel Kotke, I just met randomly at a party recently.
So set an intention, everyone.
And I got to tell him the story.
Yes. And what was his response?
He said, your computer wouldn't do that. He goes, it wouldn't do that. I go, but it did.
And Mike saw it.
Yeah, so I had a witness.
Was the witness.
Right, so I had a witness. So it's like, wow, if I didn't have a witness, that would have been really mind.
Yes. Yeah, it could have been disconcerting. Very disconcerting.
It was disconcerting as it was, but then I had a witness. And so we had there were three people. Well, there were actually four involved. So there was me, Valerie, Mike, and the intuitive.
Yes.
So Mike was basically an observer of what happened. Really, it was me, Valerie, and the intuitive.
You had the triangle of the
We had the triangle. And the triangle was the first download I got. The triangle was the first. I sat down and I was in front of my computer when I did this. I sat down, closed my eyes. The shaman said, pay attention to what you see when you close your eyes. So I closed my eyes and a triangle appeared, like a movie. Triangle. And then it multiplied, and then it transformed. And then I heard, this is creation.
And the triangle is the strongest geometric figure in nature, according to Buckminster Fuller.
Right. And it's it's the foundation for the Platonic solids. Well, I found that out immediately afterwards. And the Greeks so there are three sides, three equal sides. We're all equal. We're all the one. We're all the one. And we co-create through another, one and the other. We co-create and we make a third. So then there's the third. The Greeks called one the unique, two the other, and three the many. And from then on, it's just exponential. Once you have those three things, 1, 2, and 3, then you have all number. One of my other prompts was lowest common denominator. And I was like, what? What does that mean? There were these simple things. I had to follow down to the simplest, the essence, which is, what do they call that in science? Occam's razor. What is the simplest, most elegant explanation? So I'm not a scientist. I call myself a citizen scientist now.
Good.
Because of all these experiences, I just was trying to figure it out. How does this stuff happen?
Exactly. And that's what's been such a delight. Each time you and I connect, it's like there's been no time that's gone by, and you always bring a new discovery. And that's why this is such a rich opportunity for our viewers and listeners, because these are things that no other guest, including Dr. Stanley Krippner, who was the first guest on this podcast and YouTube channel, no one's brought that. So I'm so grateful to you for many of these concepts, because today people can go and research those farther.
And
So,
they can hear they can read the whole story on what
Okay.
tell them about so when I met Stanley and I introduced him to Georgena and told him about our story, he happened to be writing a book called Suicide's Allure. And he
Yes.
wanted to include our stories in the book, but because of the word count, he had to reduce the word count. So I became friends with him in about 2018, but it was 2020 during COVID that we really connected deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And where was I? I lost my train of thought.
That's where he was writing the book at that time.
He was writing the book.
2020.
He heard the story.
It was such a voluminous writing that
Subject.
Yes, it absolutely, that our stories could not be included.
Right. So he's been telling me, I'm looking for a place for your stories. And then he was able to finally find a place for it in the Choreopsis Journal. And it's being published on Tuesday of next week. And it's mine and Georgena's story together. He's commenting on both of our experiences from the perspective of a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
And what he knows as a consciousness researcher.
Yes.
And it's the same week that Valerie died.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's what, so again, people can say, oh, same week, so what? And yet when one goes into the awareness of the connectedness, that there is no separation, that there really is this one intelligence and we're all part of it, uniquely expressing as it, well, of course it's going to be published. And what's really unique is that the same date that the stories are published in the Choreopsis Journal is the same date that this YouTube and podcast are being posted on Integrated Wellbeing. And so the link is below so that you'll be able to go and read not only the story that Jean has shared,
Georgena's story.
But be able to hear then Dr. Krippner's interpretation of it, his expansion of it, his naming of concepts, of actual that explain this. And it's not really explaining, it's simply giving more information. Wouldn't you say, Jean?
Mm-hmm. And I would just finish by saying time is a human construct, is our construct.
It is.
We're timeless.
Mm-hmm.
We're timeless and we're not separate. So we think ourselves as separate, but we're not separate. We just don't have that vision.
Exactly. So now you had the connection of Valerie through the person in Nashville, the medical intuitive.
Yeah, she's actually in Arizona. We just happened to be in Nashville when we called her.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware.
And I had met her on another trip and in the other trip, I was another metaphysical wonder of just meeting her. I was with a friend on just driving through Arizona, and I wanted to do Reiki. I wanted to experience Reiki, and I was like, I feel stuck. What's this Reiki thing? Let's try that. And this was when you still had to have a phone book to get phone numbers. So we're driving in the car, and I was trying to find somebody that did Reiki, and everybody kept saying no, they couldn't do it. They didn't do it. And I started laughing, and I said to my friend, look at us asking the universe to somebody please come help us. And then I looked back in the phone book, and there was 5 phone numbers in there. I tried 4. There was 1 left, and it was called A Piece of the Universe. And she said, oh yeah, come on in. And when I came to visit her, she goes, why do you want to do Reiki? And I said, I don't know. I feel like I'm missing something. And I feel stuck. Because I'm going to do what she called angel therapy, which is basically she used the pendulum.
Yes.
And I sat down and she goes, sweetheart, when you were little, did they forget to feed you? Because I see you rummaging through the cupboards looking for food. And I was like, I started to cry because I didn't realize I was neglected. I just thought we were out of food. But what I realized in that moment when she said that was that there was something with me back then in my aloneness, in my struggle, that was there with me on that day. Mm-hmm. And was providing an outlet for information so I could understand, like a breadcrumb.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you could recognize it, you could relate to it, you could release it if possible, or reduce the impact so that when it came back again, it wouldn't be so intense. And we've all got these patterns to heal. We really, really do. So I'm curious now, after the time with this woman having delivered Valerie's message, did Valerie come back and communicate with you another way and another time?
She has through other mediums. Okay. She has through other mediums. I would be with the medium, and this one lady knew nothing about the story. And she goes, there's somebody here with a big personality, and she says she's a butterfly. So I don't know what kind of butterfly she is. And I'm thinking, she's a monarch butterfly. And she says out loud, she says she's a monarch butterfly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so as our time together comes to a close, as we have explored so many things and shared so many things, I want to thank you so much for sharing the letter H with us, sharing the triangle with us, beyond bluebird and butterfly. This has been extraordinary. It's been absolutely amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our audience?
There's one more little thing. One other little prompt I got was X marks the spot.
Oh.
And I was like, come on, X marks the spot. That could be anything. And I did this deep dive into X.
Okay.
What an X, all the things that an X could be. And recently I was in a shop in San Francisco, and I saw a Merkaba. The Merkaba, which is the two triangles converge, right? As above, so below.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what is on the Merkaba. X.
Yes.
X.
Mm-hmm.
These are experiences. The X is basically two convergent points. The two coming together. It's an event horizon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the way I see it. And in the middle of that is you go into an experience. That's the circle in the line. Each point has this little circle to mark that spot. But I thought that was really interesting. It's like, there's X. After all these years, it's in the Merkaba. I heard that this shape was the most comprehensive, most inclusive shape in the Platonic solids, but I didn't understand. There's always more to know.
There certainly is. And I love what you said earlier today, is that we live in an alphabet soup and we simply string the letters together. And the image that I got in that moment is creating a beautiful pearl necklace with the insights that we get, or the letters that we get to put together the words. And it's so important for each of us to remember that our words have power. So be aware of what you are saying. That's what I'm going to invite you to leave with today. And before we do that, though, I want to share a story that the day of my son Reed's funeral, 2 women were standing out in the parking lot of the church. And each of those women had worked with Reed. One was his preschool teacher, Miss Alice, and the other was with Miss Cherry, her assistant. The ironic thing is that both of those women had buried children, a 16-year-old and a baby. And as they were standing in the parking lot, Miss Alice looked up and she saw a jet, and it was at a very steep ascent. And she said to Miss Cherry, "Well, there he goes." Well, they shared that story with me. And the day they shared that story with me, Jean, I went outside, I looked up, and there was an X in the sky made by the contrails. So thank you for sharing the Merkaba. Thank you for sharing the X. That's my X marks the spot story. And I don't know about you, but I'm imagining that by finding this beautiful symbol of the Merkaba and following the message, there was an expansion in you, in your consciousness and awareness.
Oh, it's like, oh, well, there's another little breadcrumb.
Absolutely. And for me, telling and sharing that story about Reed, Miss Cherry, Miss Alice, the jet and the X, it brings the awareness to me that, again, we're not broken by this loss. We're broken open like a seed to grow in self-awareness and new connections. And I feel that new connection, that expansion in my body. So thank you so, so much for being here.
Let me just say one last thing.
Absolutely.
And that is after Valerie died, when Valerie died, I was gifted a song. I wrote a song, and there's a whole story to that, but we don't have time for that now. But I would invite you to go to YouTube or to my website, jeanfox.tv, and listen to Carry Me.
Yes. I listened after I invited you to come here. So thank you very, very, very much. So we'll put that also in the notes so that you don't even have to search. jeanfox.tv /carry me, and CARRYME.
Right. Well, you've seen it. I don't know if you have to go to put the / but you can scroll down and find the song.
Good.
All right. Thank you, Georgena.
You're welcome. Thank you,
Tell the
Jean.
story.
Okay, this was wonderful. Bye-bye.
Peace.
Yes.